So good afternoon, everyone, and congratulations. You made it to the last session of the very intense seminar. So on behalf also of my fellow speaker here, I want to thank you for being here now. I take it if you're here after a day and a half of presentation, it means you're really interested in what we want to say, and this is very nice for us. We will try to do the best to keep you engaged and show you what is the results of our work. In particular, I will try to drive you to the mind of the counterfeiters and tell you a little bit how they operate and elaborate on what we can do together to fight the counterfeiters and make their life a little bit more complicated. I will talk about three things today. First of all, I will give you an overview of the statistics of counterfeit in the euro area. In particular, we show you some example of how counterfeits are produced, from paper to other security feature. I will cover first the public feature, and then I will talk about the machine-readable feature, which are maybe more interesting for the audience. I will then elaborate on what are the different roles of the stakeholder involved in the production of banknote, in the issuance, and how we can, the different roles and responsibility. And in the third part, I will concentrate on the issuing authorities and on the banking sector side and see what are the roles and responsibility. And I conclude by saying what we can do together to fight the counterfeit, just some suggestion. But first of all, let's start with statistics. Everybody likes statistics, and we cannot have a presentation without statistics. So yesterday, we saw at the beginning of the seminar, very interesting presentation from the colleagues from the DNB and from the Austrian Central Bank, from the Payment Association on production of euro banknote. So we saw how this production is increased, and now we are now up to around 17 billion banknote in circulation. This is again a production. It's a slightly different production. It's production of counterfeit. Well, it's not really production, but it's the number of counterfeit we retrieve from circulation. We only account for what we take in circulation. We don't account for what we find, what police find outside of circulation in printing shop. Well, you can see these statistics goes from 2002, sorry, obviously, to 2012. And you can see how we have a very steep increase at the beginning with the introduction of the euro. Then we settle around 600,000 pieces a year. This is done on a 6 months period, so 300,000 pieces every 6 months. We had another peak around 2009, and now we are back to the plateau that we had before, so around 600,000 banknotes a year. We will see later if this is a risk or not, how is this can perceive. Well, if we go now on the breakdown of the last 2 years, and we look at the months, you can see even here there are peaks. More or less the average is between 40,000 and 60,000 a month, with a peak around 50,000. Production of counterfeit is affected by a number of things, including a holiday period. So normally we have peaks around December or January, and we have valley during the like spring months, and then we have again peaks maybe in summer. It's driven by a number of reasons, a number of parameters that the counterfeit take into account when they distribute. We are back again around 50,000. What the ECB consider as a risk, or one of the first level of risk for us, is when we have around 60,000 pieces in circulation. Before 60,000, so 50,000, is an average, is a value that it's to be monitored, but it's not considered risk because it's similar or even lower than the number that we had before with the legacy currency. And then considering that we have again 18 billion, 17 billion pieces in circulation. If we look at the breakdown for denomination, these are the three most commonly counterfeited denomination: the euro 50, which is, if I can laser, the euro 50 is the yellow one, the euro 20, and the euro 100. The euro 100 is very stable, around 10%. 50 and 20, they balance each other. They are around 50% each, 45% each. And again, here depends on, most of the time, the value of peaks and valley depends also on counterfeit operation, police operation. When one big printing shop is closed, we have a decrease in one currency, then another counterfeit pickups on another denomination, and so on. So we have they balance each other, but it's completely normal given the type of production. If we sum them up, altogether they go around 95% of all the counterfeit in circulation. So euro 5, euro 10, Euro 200, Euro 500 are basically nil. We have very, very few. Counterfeit, actually, we can consider them almost like collector item, especially the high denomination. There are very few examples, even historically there were before, with the legacy currency, where counterfeit were producing very small value for almost like a hobby, and very few banknote distributed. I forgot to mention that these are only what we call the common class. So the class which are distributed in all the euro area. I don't count here what we call as a local class, which has very small quantity, only distributed locally, which are not really a risk for the euro system as a whole, but they're more risk for local region, and in this case are tackled in a different way. Right, okay, before we look at the number, here is the value of counterfeit pass in circulation, which is stable around 30 million, the value of 30 million every year, more or less. You can see, again, it's up and down, but this is more or less in line with what we saw before in terms of number. The table I showed you before is the graph with the aggregate value of all the denomination, of all the different type of counterfeit. This is a table that shows class by class. So we can identify each individual counterfeit, and we monitor them, how they are distributed around. So we see which classes are more dangerous than other class. Just keep in mind this little yellow sign here, which is the 200 PX. This is one denomination that comes back later in the presentation. It's a very small value, around 10,000 a month. So consider, we say it's 50,000 the average, but it's interesting for some other reason. And the king of today is the Euro 20 PX. So it's one class. Another class is slightly different because it comes from a different production printing shop, counterfeit printing shop. Right, so now I show you the number, and I told you that 40,000, 50,000 is not really a risk. Now the question is, if this is not a risk, why are we talking about that today? Well, in reality, this again is what we take in circulation. There are lots of other volume of counterfeit which are not coming to circulation because they're taken before. So this is a picture taken of a police operation in South America. You can see here there were pounds, US dollar, there was some euro, they're not in the picture. These are counterfeits which were taken before being issued, before being circulated. So we cannot underestimate the risk of counterfeit for the credibility of the banknote and for the public trust. So we need to work to keep this in the stocks and not be distributed. Right, so now that I show you the number, let's go down to some of the counterfeit, and I start with what we call the funny money. Okay, I took an example of, we have hundreds of examples. I took an example of, two examples of Russian funny money, as we call them. This is a 500. One of you could help me here with the text, but I guess you say that this is not valid tender, and it's just for you know, it's not valid. It's funny, but it's not really funny because this banknote is breaking the law in terms of reproduction rules, so it's subject to, say, it's possible to be, the people who have this or distribute them, it's possible to be incriminated. And if I have in the database, it's because someone has passed the note to someone else as a means of payment. So when you do that, then it becomes a crime. I have another example. Okay, here, this is a picture taken in August here in Moscow. Well, these are just sample of 500 and some other currency, ruble. And these are an example, again, we have a number of these, where the people alter the face value. If they make it in this database, you can see here there is a little sign, DE, A1, this is probably passing circulation in Germany. So you would be surprised how little attention people pay to the banknote that they receive. So it's funny, but again, it's a crime. Now that we have seen the one that, but these classes are not dangerous for us. It's just dangerous for those who pass it. We need to concentrate more on the one that are dangerous for the public and for the banking industry. So I'll start talking about how the counterfeit do real or emulate some of the feature, and I will start talking about the paper, which is the basis of all counterfeit. I have a couple of examples. This is a picture taken of a composite note done with the sandwich method, so two-layer calendar together, very thin, to simulate a grammage similar to the one of paper, a little bit more than around 9,500 grams per square meter. And you can see here how the foil is emulated with a metallic stripe, and the watermark is printed in silkscreen or offset sometimes. And when this is folded together, if you look under the light, you get a similar effect than a real watermark. Another example is this. This is just a crude printing, silkscreen printing in this case, or done with thermotransfer, so through a warm cylinder in which you apply layers of ink. So now a little test. Which one is the genuine? Someone from the first line? Well, I help you because I can see you're a bit shy. So this is the fake, this is the counterfeit notes. This example is maybe 3-4 years old, so we have something a bit better before, but this gives an example of how the level of detail that the counterfeit can put into producing banknote and watermark. Right, this is the thread. Well, these are genuine, these are all counterfeit, and these are printed or embedded internally. This is a printed one, this is embedded, this is just an application on top of a metallic stripe. Being metallic, sometimes this simulate the magnetic or the infrared response that you get on a real thread. And this is an example of an embedded stripe on a fake watermark, as you can now know because you have learned from me how to distinguish them. Other feature, the optical variable device. Here there are two denominations, Euro 100, Euro 200. The top one and the bottom one. So again, which one is the fake one? This is a bit more tricky because this counterfeit here, sorry, too fast. This counterfeit here is the best holographic foil to date, is the one that comes out of this production I showed you before of 200, the 200px. So this is a very good level of counterfeit done with the dot matrix system. So in this case, the counterfeiter were able to reproduce the demetallization. So this is the fake one, and again, this is the fake one. Here you can see how they reproduce very well the microtext inside, the diffractive and demetallized element internally, and how this really gives a feeling of a real foil. This was, of course, very worry for us as we rely on a lot of people rely on the foil, on the OVI as one of the most secure elements. So this is why it's an interesting evolution. We only see this foil. There was only another example later on, but this was the only example of a real dot matrix hologram. UV, if we move from the machine-readable feature, from the public feature to the machine-readable feature, I like to start with the UV, which is something in between, really not a very strong machine-readable feature because it's very easy to imitate. Here you see an example of, still that famous 200 P3, which was really a work of art. And as you can see below, the UV is extremely well reproduced. There is not so, well, the red is reproduced, the green is reproduced, they even reproduce the fibers. So they really like a touch of perfection in how they make their counterfeit. The paper is dull, so this is a banknote that it's easy to easy to fool the public. Look at the detail of the registration of the holographic on the UV on the back with the bridge. So this is a level of detail that sometimes I wish we had in our printing work. So it's really a good job. Now that we have seen the public, let's move to the level 2 security feature, or to the more machine-readable security feature. And I start with the infrared. This is an old example, maybe 3 or 4 years, but still it's probably the first example of a common class where they, until now, they were deliberately emulate the infrared response, and they did with a magnetic ink. So you can see here, there is a very good split. the number is even reproduced, and the OVI on the back is reproduced. So this was it was a first example of a banknote which was supposed to fool the detector. Didn't fool the detector, but you know, counterfeiters are learning as they go along. So if the first version is not fooling the detector, then they learn what needs to be changed, and they just make better and better. So whenever you see a class which show potential to become a risk, then you need to monitor, because this, you know, that in time the risk would become a threat. Okay, sorry, I didn't do the exercise, but okay, now you know which one is the real one, which one is the counterfeit one. This is another example. It's a Euro 10, and well, I guess this was probably took in South America, but this, as you can see, the split again is properly done, and the number on the back is properly done. So this was very close to the real banknote, and this one, I think, fooled the detector, at least where they were distributed. I have another example, very recent. These are like few weeks old, so they are not even in the database yet in the counterfeit monitoring system. These are counterfeit which were made on purpose to fool the detector, and in fact, they were not. I mean, they were not recognized as counterfeit. And these normally are used in casino, where they would redeem for fish or other cash. So this is how they normally pass them on. And I have an enlargement, if the link is working. Yeah, this is, as you can see, it's pictures of the counterfeit notes. You see, it's very similar to the real one. You can see, you can look at it, you can see that the watermark is a bit misleading, and you can see from the foil, these lines, when you see the circular lines, is because the dot matrix is not done as well as a real genuine foil, but it's very close. And here you can see under infrared. So the split is not very clean, but somehow they were able to not be recognized. You have a real number, I mean magnetic numbers, and so on. And you can see the UV, so everything there was done properly. Going back. And the last case that I also very recent, we discussed this morning with some colleagues from GND. This is a so-called cutout notes. So the counterfeiter took half of the note and used half genuine note and half counterfeit note, and vice versa. So produced two notes out of one. We think this was mainly a test for testing sensors. So we don't see this as like a joke, but an attempt for the counterfeiter to look at what the sensor is reading and understand whether they were detected or not detected. So there was a printing shop closure, an investigation after this. Again, this is from, I think it's May or June, something like that. But we already, I mean, the police already apprehended a person which was supposed to be the one behind this operation, but it showed the risk that we are facing now as the counterfeiter are moving from only public feature to more and more machine-readable feature. I show you the enlargement, and then we continue. Okay, this is the PC1. Here they cover the foil, the patch, sorry. And you can see very well here where the cut is. This is one is genuine and one is counterfeit. All right, and go on and go on. So I mean, it's always the same. So now that I show you where the risk is, now the second question I'd like to answer together is what can we do together to reduce the risk? Well, first of all, I highlight what I see are the major stakeholders. And I start with the issuing authorities, so central banks and so on, banking sector, law enforcement, and public. We will look at these two. We just don't do this. We don't cover the law enforcement and the public, but I only put a couple of bullet points there. Clearly, what we do together with the law enforcement is, first of all, provide cooperation. So we have a database which sits in the middle, let's say a database where we share counterfeit data. Is accessible to them. All the counterfeit found in circulation are fed into the database, and the police use them for tracing even. So we can go down to the detail of the shops where the counterfeit were passed, and the maps cover the whole world with actually area where counterfeit are distributed. And this is very much helpful for the police forces to do their own investigation. And then, of course, we have education to the public. With regard to the two major stakeholders, the one that are here today, issuing authority and banking sector, we think that the roles of the issuing authority is, first of all, if we start from the beginning, first thing first, provide banknotes which are state-of-the-art in terms of security for public and machine-readable feature. And this is where we are continuously doing R&D activity, and some of you who are involved with us, they know that one of the biggest budgets of the ECB is R&D for new banknotes. So this is really an important part of our work. We need to do counterfeit deterrence activity to prevent counterfeiters in the first place to have images. And we need to produce banknote with a higher durability, because this will make a circulation clean and will make the banknote easy to be detected and easy to be accepted by machines. And we need, because this of course is important for you, to have a banknote with a very stable production and values, so that they're easily, you don't see with sensor a production variation. So this is on the production side. We need to do a proper monitoring of counterfeit, and we are doing this through the counterfeit monitoring system, the CMS. And we need to do a regular update of the training set for the recycling framework, for the recycling equipments that central bank and commercial banks use for recirculation. This is something that we were discussing how we can do this better in the future, as this is key for commercial banks. And then we need to have cooperation with the banking sector to optimize the cash cycle, to have common procedure. We already have them, but they can always be improved. And to have a coordination at the moment when we design and we test and we issue banknote. This is something quite new in central bank history. It's already like 10 years that we're doing that, but it's something that we need to enforce and continue to the future, as it's the key for a proper cooperation in the fight against counterfeit. Now, if this is our role, your role is, first of all, to stick to the rule that were agreed at the Eurosystem level through the decision of the ECB. So they can banknote only recirculated when they are checked properly for authenticity. And then we also, and this is something that has been asked also to push here, is that it's important that the commercial banks and in the recycling framework do a proper check of their sensor, do a calibration, and rely on more security features. So R&D from the side of the commercial bank is also important, and today we have seen a lot of new technology. It's also important in this common fight. So I'd like to conclude here, because I see also my time is past, saying that what we have seen now is that more and more cash circulation is done outside of the traditional cycle, outside of central bank, and more is moving to commercial banks. So more and more the risk for counterfeit shift from the public also to commercial banks, and the responsibility that comes with that. So more than before, it's important that we cooperate to together design banknote, check them, and reissue them in a proper condition, and monitor counterfeit. And the conference of today, which bring together issuing authority, law enforcement or central banks, and the banking sector, is one of the key elements that are necessary and that I think are we very welcome them, because they help us in this, they help really in the direction of providing a common objective. So with this one, I think I concluded. I'm available now or later for any question. You can even tell it to me or mail to me. And we, of course, are very much involved in the cash process either at the ECB or through our branch or through our national central banks. Thank you.
Thank you, Luca.